Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another weekly fighting roundup, and of course got the boxing and MMA news. So if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So starting off, of course, with the boxing news, and Doheny has called out Nick Bull. It's an interesting call out, and do I believe the fight will happen? Probably not, but like I say, it's interesting nonetheless. Aziz will fight Edmondson October 19th. Ali has joined Wasserman. Barrios will fight Ramos November 15th. Davis Jr. versus Fortuna, and Walker vs Garcia will fight November 1st. Flores will fight Olivio October 24th. Janabek will fight Mikhailovic October 4th. To be honest, I'm quite surprised that this fight is actually still going ahead. Of course, last time the fight was meant to happen, it was all scheduled to happen, but then Janabek fainted and collapsed due to the weight cut, and so I'm surprised. It seemed like he wanted to stick at middleweight. It's going to be interesting to see how he goes about the weight cut and if he's able to do it responsibly and safely. But I just didn't think this fight would actually end up happening after it got called off, because it was an interesting matchup in the first place. But I think it makes for a good fight. I mean, I've already done my prediction for it, so if you want to go see that, it's a couple of months ago now. So yeah, just go scroll back on my channel, and I'm sure it will be there. And like I say, it's an interesting matchup, and a lot to lose for Janabek, but I respect him for still wanting to take the challenge. I know Mikhailovic was very annoyed when the fight did get called off. Colbert versus Salcido, Navarro versus Gamble, Eder Biat versus Fortunato will fight October 9th. GBM I've partnered with Bravos. Hamed won via points versus Garces. Congo won via points versus Quinn. Wong won via points versus Hughes, and it was a nice little free card fight show on the public workout for Joshua versus Dubois, and yeah, they were interesting fights. They were nice little uh, opportunities for fighters to get put onto a big platform realistically, and it was sad to see Hughes lose. It was somebody who I've had the pleasure of speaking to on the channel, and I know is a fighter who fights and is based not too far away from me, and it was sad to see, but Wong put on a very good performance. But Hughes still put on a very tough showing and a durable showing from himself. Reynolds won via KO in round 4 versus Atem. Glezos won by TKO in round 2 versus Thoncode. Telepe won by TKO in round 1 versus Jam Patat. Molinaro won by TKO in round 4 versus Glenister. Polkinghorn won by TKO round 2 versus Karame. Taylor won by unanimous decision versus Hatanaka. Pornala won by unanimous decision versus Graham. Wells won by split decision versus Cook to become Australian Victorian State middleweight champion. Telepe won by a TKO round 4 versus Gersbeck. Malia won by unanimous decision versus Horn to become Australian welterweight champion. White is entering boxing. That is Dana White saying that he's entering boxing and getting involved with it. And I mean, as Ariel Helwani said, he's been saying this for a while, but it's just never really seemed to fully work out. And he was involved with the Callum Walsh fight, and that was somebody he's been bigging up well and has made a bit of a name for himself now, but it's nowhere near the kind of world title fights in which I'm sure he's going to want to put on. It's going to be interesting to see what he means by entering it, if it even happens or not. I'm sure he wants to, but it's just if it's going to happen or not, and also what kind of format and what kind of, if he's going to come in with the UFC format, and if that's going to work. And yeah, like I said, there's various different things in which it's going to be interesting to see how he deals with it. But he says he's entering. Price will fight October 25th. The WBA have ordered Stanionis versus Giasov, which I think is a very underrated but great fight. Ennis versus Chukadzian, Rodriguez versus Guevara, and Ford versus Gonzalez will fight November 9th. I think this is probably one of the more stacked matchroom shows in which they could have put on, with the options in which they had available to them without Riyadh season being involved. And Ennis, of course, it's not a huge matchup for him, but it seemed like the fights were difficult to be made. I mean, Crawford doesn't really seemingly want to fight him. Norman Jr. was pricing himself out of a fight. And so Chukadzian, who was getting ordered to fight, so he pretty much had to unless he wanted to vacate the belt. Ennis, it made sense why he wanted to do it. And so yeah, like I said, the fight makes sense, and so now we're seeing it. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting contest. And then Rodriguez versus Guevara, I think, is a very good matchup. To be honest, I don't really think it's going to make for any kind of upset of a result. But I just think Guevara is going to be a tough test for Rodriguez, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that fares out. And Ford vs Gonzalez is a good fight just to see Raymond Ford get back in the mix. Um, Moving on, Rodriguez has signed also a new deal with Matchroom in the process, so yeah, it seems like they are getting involved now as well, and he's wanting to stick with Matchroom for a while and probably will be on Riyadh season cards relatively soon. Davis is in talks to fight Roach in December. I think that is uh, an interesting matchup. I mean, Roach has always been quite big for the super featherweight division, and Davis has always been small for the lightweight division, but Roach isn't really known as being a puncher, so it's kind of makes sense as to why perhaps Davis wants to take this fight. It is a little bit of a less of a risky fight in that opinion, but at the same time, like I said, there's various different options and routes he could have taken for this fight, and so yeah, now he's most probably going to be fighting Roach next in December. O'Keefe won via TKO in round 4 versus Goodstein Dotier. O'Brien won via technical decision versus Donovan to remain Celtic Super Welterweight champion. Carty won via TKO in round 2 versus Vergara. Brennan won via split decision versus Cronin to become Celtic Super Middleweight champion. Akhmedov won via split decision versus Debombe. Walsh won via KO in round 2 versus Ranowski to remain WBC Continental American Super Welterweight champion. And like I said before, he's making a bit of a name for himself now, Callum Walsh, and he's getting the wins to back it up, so it's all fair enough. But he's not quite at the high level yet, but it will come, I'm sure. And like I say, he's got an excellent backing and he's delivering good stoppages, and so yeah, like I say, I'm sure it will come. Moving on. Munguia won by a KO in round 10 versus Bazinian. That was a pretty much a shutout victory for Munguia. I believe I said that he'd win, possibly via unanimous decision, is what I said. But he looked a lot better, I think, or just in general, he looked confident. People were questioning a lot how he would look coming off the Canelo loss, and in general, like I say, I think he looked confident. He was really letting his hands go. The punches he was throwing was a lot tidier and a lot cleaner than sometimes he was throwing in previous fights when he was just letting his hands go. And was really having a lot of success. Obviously, there were certain things defensively. He was still getting caught with shots because of the minimal head movement, but in general, the movement was relatively good from him, and so he seems like he is improving, and that could have been possibly one of his best performances yet. And that's all credit to him, and it really does set up that Belanga fight, which is a huge fight in which everybody wants to see, and hopefully will end up happening. Moving on, Padley won by unanimous decision versus Chamberlain. Kelly won by majority decision versus Davis. Shiraz won by a TKO in round 2 versus Denny to become Commonwealth, EBU European, and WBC Silver Middleweight Champion. Kikache won by unanimous decision versus Warrington to remain IBO World Super Featherweight Champion. Buatsi won by split decision versus Hutchinson to become WBO Interim World Light Heavyweight Champion. And Dubois won via KO in round 5 versus Joshua to remain IBF World Heavyweight Champion, and that was the Wembley Riyadh season card. It was an excellent show, to be honest. I think it definitely did live up to the bill and created everything in which you kind of expected from such a huge event. Of course, 96,000 fans were there, so they kind of had to put on a show and put on a spectacle. And like I say, I really think it did deliver up to that. And to start and go through all the fights on this card, Padley was a shocking unanimous decision win versus Chamberlain. To be honest, I mean Chamberlain, I'm sure you probably see it a lot. Fighters riding the high, coming in confident, coming in a bit too confident, and just getting too comfortable being on the big stages. And Padley really kind of shut that out. And it's going to be interesting to see now if Padley is eligible and they're wanting to have him back on these big shows or not. And Chamberlain, like I say, he was put on these big shows consistently, and he was His Excellency's probably favourite fighter. But now, is that still the case? I'm not too sure. Kelly, that majority decision versus Davis. That was a good performance from Kelly. It was sad to see Davis lose, to be honest, but he came in on short notice and put up a really valiant effort, to be honest. I mean, Kelly in the earlier rounds did look very clean, sharp, was landing well, making Davis struggle to land on him, and in general was showing a bit of a difference in class, and that was a very good performance from him. Hopefully, we will see the Liam Smith fight still happen, but Davis came on good into the later rounds. I'm sure he can get back to a high level again, but it was a bit of a kick in teeth to happen such early on in his career. But like I say, I respect him for even taking the opportunity in the first place. The Shiraz win versus Denny was destructive, to be completely honest. I mean, I got my prediction, I believe, right. I think I said it was unanimous decision, but I said that Shiraz would win, but I really didn't think that Denny would be able to get knocked out, and Shiraz really just kind of kept the range, kept the jab, really showed that power early, and then as soon as he hurt him, pretty much the first exchange in which he had, then he just put it on him realistically, and he was just way too much for Denny. I'm kind of glad the ref did step in when he did because I think it probably would have gotten a lot worse for Denny. Denny was just unable to get in close. There was such a huge size difference between the two of them, and perhaps Denny could move down and then perhaps go on to fight and achieve there. Obviously, he could still carry on at the middleweight division and still pick up belts again. I'm sure he's not done, but that Shiraz was really a showing of class type fight, and I think it was a little bit perhaps of a performance in which he had to really show that because I don't think Denny was the level of opposition in which he really wanted to be fighting. So hopefully now he could get a huge opportunity next. I don't know if it will be Denzel Bentley or not. That's not a huge fight, I don't believe, but it is kind of being set up by Queensberry for that to happen. But like I said, I just don't know if that's a huge fight and if Shiraz would want that or if he'd want something a bit bigger. But we'll have to wait and see. And now he's just on an excellent run of stoppages now, Shiraz. Kakache, that win versus Warrington, I think I said it was a stoppage win, but Kakache I said would win, and I was right with that. Warrington put up a very valiant effort again, but Kakache, pretty much like I said in my prediction, was just a bit too physically strong. Was throwing him about at times, but just they both came fired up. It was an excellent fight. Warrington, like I say, just wasn't really able to keep up with him like he possibly once would have in the past. Now he's seemingly retired. I don't know if he has or not, but he put down his gloves and into the middle of the ring, so I have to wait and see if he actually has or not. But Kakache now moves on. I think, like I say, it was a tough opposition in Warrington. Warrington was always going to be durable and tough. I respect Warrington for not getting stopped. He took some big blows, and after the Lee Wood fight, perhaps there were questions around his chin and everything, and also the Lara fight before, a few fights before that, and so there were questions, but he showed up a very tough fight there and a very durable fight. But he's had 3 losses in a row now, so I'm not really too sure how much he can really go on to achieve and if he really wants to take a step down in an opponent or not. But yeah, like I say, Kakache moves on. Hopefully, he goes on to get a big American type fight next. In my opinion, I think the winner of a Conte Sal versus a Foster could make for an excellent fighter. Rocky Hernandez could make for an excellent fight. I think there are very good fights to be made there. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Moving on, Boatsi, yeah, obviously got that split decision win versus Hutchinson. It definitely wasn't realistically split decision in my opinion. I mean, Boatsi of course knocked him down twice. Hutchinson had success at times, but I just think looked a bit too comfortable. Was kind of plodding around, and Boatsi's explosiveness was kind of catching him out a little bit at times, and also great body work in which he was just executing and just completely breaking down Hutchinson realistically. I got my prediction wrong. I thought Hutchinson would be able to win. He did very well to stay in all the way through the fight, and like I say, it was interesting how he got a split decision. But nonetheless, like I say, Boatsi, that was I think a showing of performance from his experience, and perhaps maybe if this was a few fights further down the line for Hutchinson, it could have gone a different way. But like I say, it possibly was a little bit too early for him in that type of a fight. And perhaps now we'll see Boatsi to go on to fight a Yard. There's been talks about that for a long time now, so hopefully that will be the fight in which we'll see next. Moving on, of course, the main event, Dubois stunning pretty much everybody in that Wembley Stadium and stopping Joshua, and it was a very good performance from Dubois. He hurt him pretty much with one of the first big shots in which he landed at the end of the first round, and Joshua a lot of boxing fundamentals wrong realistically. He was waiting for that right hand, that right straight the entire time, and really couldn't just land it realistically much. Dubois wasn't really doing anything too impressive. He slipped a few nice shots every so often, but was pretty much just throwing big hooks. And then Joshua's versatility in his attacks are so limited. He was going backwards as well with the defense, just non-existent. Just walking backwards, strolling backwards, hands low, standing upright, just waiting there to be hit. And then Dubois literally just had to just land one of his hooks onto him, and then he was going to drop him. And consistently getting dropped Joshua and not learning from his mistakes there. I don't believe that is his coach's fault. I think that is just himself not really wanting to accept what was going on because it was weird what he was doing in the fight. He was sticking his tongue out, he was pointing at Dubois' stall, he was trying to act all confident and cool and everything like that, but he just didn't make any adjustments necessary for realistically what he was doing. Perhaps into the fifth round he came on a little bit better, a little bit sharper, and did hurt Dubois into that shot, but at that point there was literally nothing left. He just came forwards and then just walked onto another shot because, again, the boxing fundamentals, the low guard and just standing straight upright in front of your target, in range, dropping your hands for a shot, you're just asking to get hit realistically. And Dubois looked surprised when he even knocked him out because he was hurt himself and then just landed one big haymaker in which, like I say, it's just a Hail Mary type shot in which he threw. I don't really think he expected it to work, but it was kind of a last gasp opportunity for him to be able to win, and he did that impressively. And, now that is a performance from Joshua which was a really poor performance. I think that is the poorest of his career, and now it's going to be interesting to see where he goes from there. There's been talks of him retiring. Will he? Maybe, possibly he should, but like I say, we'll have to wait and see. There is, of course, the rematch clause. We probably will end up seeing the rematch, I'm sure. For Dubois' career, it's probably not the best of things, but at the same time, for the money and everything like that, I'm sure he's going to want to do that because, like I say, he's probably going to sell loads again. They could probably do Wembley again if they wanted to, and it'd be a big thing like that. But he might even be on an undercard. I'm not even too sure, but he's earned himself as a world champion now. Obviously, I still believe that Usyk is undisputed, but he's still a somewhat deserving world champion now. Dubois and. Realistically, fights I'd want to see Joshua versus Wilder now. They're both coming off poor performances. They both looked like they were struggling. They looked like they couldn't take a punch realistically, and they looked quite, I don't know, vulnerable in a lot of different circumstances, defensively especially. So I think that fight could make sense more than ever now. And Wilder's probably going to wait around because he doesn't want to retire yet, and he probably is going to wait around for a big opportunity, and that could be the big opportunity in which he's been waiting for. So that could be a fight that makes sense. Of course, we don't see the rematch, and it's a dangerous rematch for Joshua to take because if he takes it and loses again badly, then it puts me in an even worse position, and that's kind of highlighting perhaps vulnerabilities in his chin then. And Dubois, I would like to see him go on fight Joseph Parker. I think that would be a very tough fight to take. I think Joseph Parker's style was difficult for a lot of heavyweights to deal with, and he's on excellent form right now. So, like I say, we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully, that happens. But then people like Zhang have been calling out Dubois. I want to, of course, still see Zhang versus Bacoli, and then kind of all of them free fights, and then we kind of pick who goes on to fight who. I mean, I think the winner of Dubois Parker probably is deserving of the winner of Usyk Fury. That's if Usyk doesn't want to move down in weight and then go back down to cruiserweight. Fury, even if he loses versus Usyk, probably could still pick out the winner of Dubois versus Parker if they fight. And I'm sure he's not really too bothered about fighting Dubois because it's probably not a huge payday, but perhaps that could be a fight that could make sense if he wants to fight, but he could retire if he loses versus Usyk Fury. So, it's an interesting time in the heavyweight division. Right now, I think there are fights to be made, but the future and the projections of the heavyweight division will probably be changing a lot within the next 6 to 12 months. Moving on now, though. Kadiru won by a TK round 5 versus Sheik. Mike won by majority decision versus Bermudez to become IBF World Featherweight Champion. I got my prediction wrong for this one. I said that Bermudez would win. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to see any of the tape for this one, but nonetheless, it's a Mike victory and perhaps has put her back into a good position to the featherweight rankings now. And like I say, could be in for a shot at the winner of Nicholson versus Chapman to go on to then try and unify the division a bit. Moving on, Warrington, like I say, has retired, seemingly retired. He might not have, but he did, like I say, put down his gloves. And Kai's won by disqualification in round 5 versus Upon Tiptak. And Jerusalem won by a decision versus Castillo to remain WBC World Minimum Weight Champion. I got my prediction wrong for this one. I thought that Castillo would be able to win, would be able to land shots at mid range, perhaps even hurt Jerusalem. But Jerusalem's movement, like I said in my prediction, is good, and he was showcasing that a lot. Castillo looked unsure on when to throw. Whenever he did throw, Jerusalem was able to land and hurt him. Dropped him in the first round very nicely. Jerusalem is improved, and I think he is becoming an actual name in the minimum weight division right now, and perhaps that rematch versus Collazo could be on down the line. Perhaps, like I say, big fights versus Shigioka's brothers could happen, and yeah, I think he's becoming a bit of a name. And with the the backing of now Pacquiao seemingly as well, he's got potential there, and I think this is just a shocking but earned propel in his career, in which, like I say, he's now put himself back into a great position. Moving on now to the MMA news, there's not really much news. There was no kind of big cards realistically to speak about, so just kind of fight news really. Nickel versus Craig, Weidman versus Anders, Martinez versus McGee, and Roya versus Silva will fight November 16th. Nurmagomedov versus Santos, and Basharat versus Hugo will fight October 26th. Sterling versus Evelayev is off. Evelayev is seemingly desperate to fight anybody and has pretty much called out everybody available if they want to fight him. Garbrandt will fight Johns November 9th, and Smith will fight Reyes December 7th. And yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like video if you did indeed like video, subscribe if you are new, and thanks for watching.